Welcome back. Today we're going on a deep dive into the world of the Enneagram.
Sounds good.
Specifically, we're focusing on Type 2,
Type 2, yeah.
which is known as the helper. We received a request from a listener who's really interested in learning more about this type.
Okay.
And we've got 2 articles from the Spiritual Seek that we'll be looking at today to try and help understand this type better.
Awesome.
So the
Yeah.
Enneagram breaks down our motivations and behaviors.
Yeah, and I think when we start talking about type 2s, one of the biggest things that comes up is this deep desire to be loved and appreciated.
Oh yeah, that definitely seems to be a recurring theme in both of these articles we're looking at today.
Right.
And they both point out that Type 2s are either like genuinely helpful people or they're really invested in being seen as helpful,
Mm-hmm.
which makes you think a little bit about, what are the real motivations behind some of their actions?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it all comes back to that desire to be loved and appreciated. It's kind of what fuels all their actions. Right.
And so they kind of express their love for others through, things like acts of service, words of affirmation, just going above and beyond for those around them.
It's interesting because the articles highlight a lot of the key motivations they have.
Yeah.
So they talk about wanting to be loved.
Hmm.
They talk about expressing their feelings for other people,
Uh-huh.
feeling needed and appreciated,
Yes.
and seeking validation from others.
Hmm.
It almost seems like kind of a cycle. They
Yeah.
help to feel loved and they want to be loved to keep helping.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to consider, too, that drive to be so helpful
Yeah.
can actually stem from a fear
Oh.
of being unwanted
Oh,
or
yeah.
unworthy of love.
Yeah.
So I think, recognizing that fear is kind of key because it helps us to understand, how this type behaves
Right.
at both, their healthiest levels and their unhealthiest levels.
Okay. And one of the articles actually shares this really heartwarming story.
About Don Risso's grandmother, who is described as like a healthy 2.
Yeah.
And basically she became this surrogate mother
Wow.
to countless servicemen during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And the article says that she found like her greatest fulfillment in those years by
Yeah.
caring for these people.
It's a beautiful example of
Yeah.
how a 2 can express their love through action.
For sure.
And I think, both articles do a good job of highlighting a lot of the positive attributes that are associated with this type as well.
Yeah.
Things like empathy, compassion, warmth, generosity,
Right.
sincerity, this genuine desire to, encourage and appreciate other people.
Yeah.
So it's really those qualities that make them such magnetic and supportive individuals.
Absolutely. But of course,
Yeah.
no personality type is without its downsides.
Definitely not.
And these articles also caution that 2s can struggle with things like pride, self-deception,
Yeah.
and becoming overly involved in the lives of others.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
sometimes that over-involvement can actually even cross the line into manipulation.
Oh, wow.
Even if it's unintentional as they try to, fulfill their own emotional needs through those relationships with other people.
Right. That's really interesting. I like how the Spiritual Seek really brought up the importance of self-awareness
Yes.
and boundary setting,
Oh, absolutely crucial.
especially for this type.
Yeah.
Recognizing their own needs
Mm.
and avoiding those codependent patterns really stood out to me.
Yeah. It's so important for 2s to understand that taking care of themselves
Right.
isn't selfish. It's
Yeah.
actually essential for having healthy relationships
Absolutely.
and avoiding that resentment that can build up down the line.
Yeah. You're right. One of the articles, True You Journal, offered some practical insights into how to actually recognize it too,
Right.
based on behavior, and even some physical cues.
Oh, interesting.
And so they said, a lot of times they have this really warm smile and approachable demeanor.
That makes sense.
They're very likely to be vocal volunteers or activists.
Mm-hmm.
They're really strong team players.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times they might even take on this kind of like parental role in their friend groups,
Oh, wow.
almost like the mom or the dad of the group.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about how those observations tie into their behavior and relationships too,
Definitely.
because there's this strong emphasis on romantic connections,
Mm-hmm.
an intuitive ability to read other people.
Right.
And yes, that potential struggle with setting boundaries and expressing their own needs directly.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've covered a lot of the core motivations and potential
Yeah.
pitfalls for Type 2s.
We have.
But one of the articles also mentioned these wings.
Right.
And I thought that concept itself was really intriguing.
Yeah, I think it's a really important aspect of understanding type 2s.
Okay.
It adds another layer to their personality. So basically, the concept of wings suggests that twos can lean towards either type 1,
Okay.
which is the servant, or type 3, which is the hostess.
So let's break down each wing and how it might actually influence their personality.
Sounds good. So now that we've talked about some of the basics of
Yeah.
the type 2 personality,
Right.
let's kind of dive a little deeper into their levels of development.
Okay.
So the Enneagram Institute actually provides this really comprehensive look at how twos behave
Okay.
at different levels of health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really insightful.
It's like a roadmap almost to understanding, the different expressions of this type.
Totally.
Yeah, which I think is really helpful for both twos themselves
Yeah.
and, the people in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So at their healthiest, how would you describe it to?
So healthy twos really embody that essence of the helper.
Okay.
They're deeply unselfish,
Okay.
humble,
Okay.
altruistic. They really radiate that unconditional love. Yeah.
Not just towards others, but also towards themselves.
Oh, interesting.
So they kind of see being in someone's life as a privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and they offer support without any expectation of
Right.
anything in return.
Wow. That sounds like genuine selflessness.
It is.
What are some of the specific traits that stand out at this level of health?
So at their healthiest, twos really radiate empathy and compassion.
Okay.
They're incredibly attuned to the feelings of others.
Right.
They have this genuine concern for their needs.
Mm.
They're thoughtful, warm-hearted, forgiving, sincere,
Yeah.
and they just find so much joy
Yeah.
in nurturing and supporting others. And I think importantly, too, they also prioritize their own well-being.
Okay.
So their giving nature is balanced
Right.
and sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not coming at the expense of their own needs.
So it's not that they're neglecting themselves. It's
Oh.
just that they found that balance between
Right.
self-care and helping others.
What about as they move towards like the average levels of health?
Yeah. So as twos move towards those average levels, their need to be close to others
Okay.
can sometimes lead to some of those more, classic people-pleasing behaviors.
Right.
So they become overly friendly, emotionally demonstrative, full of good intentions.
Yeah.
But you might see them kind of showering others
Oh, okay.
with, attention, approval, flattery, all in the hopes of, securing affection and feeling loved.
So it seems like their need for love becomes a little bit more pronounced,
Mm-hmm.
and they start seeking validation through their actions a little bit more.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential downsides that can happen when they approach things that way?
Well, the danger is that twos can become overly intimate and intrusive, blurring those boundaries in the name of love.
Okay.
That need to be needed can sometimes turn into, hovering, meddling, even controlling behaviors.
Oh,
And they might give generously, but there's often this kind of unspoken expectation
right.
of reciprocation.
Yeah. Which can lead to, issues down the line.
So their helpfulness is kind of entangled with their own emotional needs a little bit more, which could create some of those codependent patterns we were talking about earlier.
Right.
And the article mentioned this concept of double messages.
Right.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So double messages basically refer to those mixed signals that twos can sometimes send.
Okay.
So, they might express a desire to help, but then they can become resentful
Oh, wow.
when their efforts aren't appreciated in the way that they expected.
Interesting.
So this kind of creates confusion and tension in relationships because, those on the receiving end
Yeah.
are left feeling unsure of the two's true motivations.
So self-awareness seems really crucial for twos to avoid falling into these unhealthy patterns.
Yes, no way.
What happens as they move even further down that spectrum
Yeah.
towards those unhealthy levels?
So as twos descend into those unhealthy levels,
Mm-hmm.
they can actually become increasingly self-important and self-satisfied.
Oh.
So they start to believe that they're indispensable,
Uh-huh.
often overrating their efforts in helping others.
Yeah.
And you might even see them develop, hypochondria or adopt this kind of martyr complex,
Wow.
using their suffering to garner sympathy and attention.
So it's like their helpfulness morphs into a way to control and manipulate others,
Right.
even if they're not fully conscious of it.
Right.
What are some of the ways that these unhealthy behaviors manifest in a more extreme way?
So at their most unhealthy, twos can become outright manipulative and self-serving.
Okay.
So they might resort to guilt trips, emotional pressure
Oh, wow.
to get what they want from others.
Yeah.
Some might even abuse food or medication to kind of stuff their feelings
Right.
and elicit sympathy.
Oh, wow.
They can become really domineering, coercive,
Yeah.
feeling entitled to, repayment for their past generosity.
Whether it's money, favors, even sexual attention.
That's a stark contrast
Right.
to the image of the loving and selfless helper
It really is.
we were discussing earlier. It just really highlights how important it is
Yeah.
to understand that full spectrum of the type 2 personality
Exactly.
and recognize that, even those positive qualities
Yes.
can become distorted
For sure.
when they're driven by unhealthy motivations.
You're absolutely right. And, the Enneagram isn't about labeling people as good or bad,
Right.
but it's about, providing this framework
Right.
for understanding the complexities
Yeah,
of human behavior.
of course.
It's about recognizing our patterns, acknowledging our shadows,
Yeah.
and striving for greater self-awareness and growth.
I think this deep dive into Enneagram Type 2
Yeah,
has been really insightful so far.
it has.
We've explored a lot of their motivations, their fears, the strengths, potential pitfalls, and even like their compatibility with other types.
Right.
So what are some of the key takeaways
Yeah.
we can leave our listeners with at this point in our exploration?
I think it's essential to remember that, understanding the type 2 personality
Right.
isn't just for twos themselves.
Okay.
It's actually incredibly beneficial for
Yeah.
anyone who interacts with them
Yeah.
because recognizing their patterns can help us to navigate those relationships
Right.
with more empathy and compassion.
Absolutely.
Like into, stronger and healthier connection.
For sure. And I would say for any twos listening out there,
Mm-hmm.
just remember that self-care is not selfish.
Yes.
It's actually crucial
Yeah.
for maintaining those healthy boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
avoiding resentment, and really expressing your love
Yeah.
in a way that's both genuine and sustainable.
Absolutely. And perhaps the most important takeaway is that twos, in their quest for love and belonging,
Yeah.
really hold up a mirror to all of us.
Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, for sure. So their deep desire to connect
Right.
really reflects our own, fundamental human need for
Yeah.
love and acceptance.
That makes sense.
And it kind of encourages us to examine, how we express our love, how we seek validation, and how we navigate, the complexities of relationships.
That's a really powerful thought.
It is.
Maybe we can all learn something
Yeah,
from the twos yearning for connection.
definitely.
What other insights can we glean
Mhm.
from this exploration of the type 2 personality?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about how that desire for connection really is like a universal human need. It seems like there's always more to uncover when it comes to the Enneagram.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even though we've covered a lot of ground today,
Right.
it's important to remember that this deep dive is really just a starting point.
Yeah.
The Enneagram's such a rich and nuanced system.
Right.
And, even within a single type.
There's just a vast spectrum of individual experiences and variations.
That's what makes it so compelling, though.
Yeah.
It's not about putting people into these rigid categories,
No, not at all.
but it's about providing that framework
Right.
for self-discovery and understanding.
Exactly. And, if this exploration has piqued your interest at all, I really encourage you to, keep learning, keep researching.
Yeah.
There are so many resources available these days.
Oh, for sure.
To help you kind of delve deeper into the Enneagram,
Yeah, absolutely.
from books and articles to workshops, online communities, all sorts of things.
Yeah. As you continue to explore, just think about how, understanding the Enneagram can really impact your relationships,
Right.
your self-awareness, and even just your personal growth journey.
Totally. It can be such a powerful tool for personal development.
Yeah.
And, maybe you'll discover something new about yourself or gain a deeper understanding of the people around you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of Enneagram Type 2.
It's been fun.
We hope you gained some valuable insights.
Definitely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Sounds good.